Okay, hello. I can't speak. Hello, everyone. It's Jason and Caroline. We don't. This is, I think, podcast 8. I think of this series. We haven't got Judy with us because she is otherwise engaged in an important exercise, marshalling small children for her daughter, which I'm sure she's enjoying. But we miss you, Judy. It was fun last time, and I'm sure Judy will be back. So Caroline's here today with me. It's just me and Caroline, and we kind of set this up as a talk about context in language learning, in English language learning. And I kind of made some notes, as I want to do. And Caroline also wanted to talk about, because we just had a little chat off air. Is it air? I don't know. Or off zeros and ones or something like that. About exploding the myth, the name of the podcast, because Caroline had an experience with a student or potential student who she was talking to about English out there and how it works, and went through everything. And then the person went and spoke to their partner or boyfriend or whatever, and then decided it wasn't her thing. And it was kind of interesting, that conversation. So do you want to explain a bit about that, Caroline? Because like, it's interesting for me that you kind of hit this buffer, this kind of barrier in terms of the general public, i.e., people who want to learn English or a language, like their perception of what language learning is.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I had a conversation with a person who wants to improve her English. Her English at the moment is pretty basic. She understands a little, she can speak a little, and she wants to be able to have more interesting conversations with people. She doesn't need it for work. She doesn't need it for certifications or anything like that. It's purely personal. And English out there is a wonderful opportunity to be able to improve your English to the point where you can have super interesting conversations with anybody, anywhere. And so I took her through the whole thing. I explained how it works. I explained what it is. And I showed her an example of a very simple lesson that she could prepare. And we went through some of the exercises together. And I showed her what to do to be able to get the most out of it. I told her about the fact that at the end of the lesson, we have the chance to record a conversation based on the lesson together. And then the idea is that she should listen to the recording a few times before I see her for the next lesson. In that way, she would be able to notice the things that were difficult for her and notice the things that she found worked, etc., etc. There are a lot of different things to say about that. So she sounded interested, and found it interesting, and bought the material. So I think somebody who's going to buy it there and then is definitely interested, and made an appointment with me for the first lesson. After that, I got a message from her saying that she spoke to her boyfriend, and that in fact it didn't appear to be the right thing for her. And I was obviously disappointed for two reasons. One is because I had invested time and energy in the conversation with her, and also because I knew that, and I know that what she's looking for is exactly this. It's the possibility to improve her English in a way that is pretty unique. There are some people offering vaguely similar systems, but this one, in my experience, is practically infallible. I mean, it's amazing. So I know that I've had so many people benefit from it.
So do you think Because what you said before we started recording is that she had a chat with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend, who hadn't had the
Exactly.
explanation about how
Yeah.
it works and how effective it is and why it's effective, just drew on his prior knowledge of all language courses
Yes.
and decided it was different, therefore it wasn't a valid language course. It's
Yeah.
like,
Maybe.
is that
Maybe
is that
because.
is that what happened? That's what I perceive from the
Yeah,
story, you
that's
know.
probably what happened because there are lots of different ways to learn English, but most of them are based on the traditional systems.
Mm,
So that's what people know, and that's what and generally speaking, one goes for what one knows.
yeah,
So I think he hadn't, as you say, he hadn't heard anything
yeah,
about it
yeah.
except from her, and she had only had like that hour with me hearing
Mm.
about it. So yeah,
And
exactly.
that and that and that kind of, then we got on to, and it was interesting for me because you telling that story, because you then mentioned, you know, the name of the podcast, Exploding the Myth of ELT, and that made me think. And I mentioned the millions on Facebook groups around the world, lots of them in China, India, Pakistan, places like that, who are desperate to improve their English because they know the benefits to them and their family long term economically and stuff like that. Um, and are doing it in a way that is firmly entrenched in the past, and in convention, and in what I would call the indoctrination of the prevailing educational system.
Mm.
So it's kind of that thing, and you asked me, I know, because you know you wanted to know if I'd had similar experiences, and I have over the years. Yeah, I always laugh because you know I've had I've even started working sometimes with people. I remember one guy was a very high powered executive or something like that, and it was we didn't really even start. We just discussed it like you were with this girl, and his attitude was, you know, that's not a language course. That's not the kind of thing that I expect, and even someone saying I want to do it this way, you know, and I said, well, go on then. I don't do it that way, so you better go away. You know,
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
thing. I'm
Who
not
does
doing
it?
it because it's a complete and bloody waste of my time. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. Go and spend loads of money wasting your time and come back in a year when you haven't improved your spoken English. There you go. And I can be quite brutal, I think, in some ways, in things like that. You know, I mean, because I've been doing it so long and met so many people and met so many kind of people who kind of, you know, you can explain it, well, they don't quite get it. But I always go back to Liliana from Colombia, who I worked with in like 2012, 13, who and Lily was great. And I asked her, said, Lily, how many English courses have you done? And she said, oh, about 20 over the years. And I made her, I made her write down all the courses, when she'd done them and what they cost. And she'd steadily, over a period of about God knows how many years, done virtually everything. She'd done Berlitz, she'd done, she ended up ultimately at the British Council in Bogota, paying massive amounts of money,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up with me still struggling to speak with confidence. And in, you know, 10 weeks, she was fine. Boom, off you go. Tatty bye. And at the end, I always say, so do you think you know how it works now? How you actually learn English, learn to speak a second language? And they always go, yeah, boom,
Mm.
autonomous learner, bye bye.
Yeah.
And so it's an education thing. It's, you know, we're still millions and millions of people wasting hours of time and money
Mm.
and frustration. I mean, imagine how frustrating it is. It's amazing. So there you go. That's that story. Now let's we go on to context. Haha. Context. So I'm going to start with a question for you.
Mm.
Oh, I like doing that. So what do you understand with regards to the term context in English learning?
For me, it's almost physical. It's like you're having a conversation about something. You're there. You can. I like it when people can describe something and make it like a film, so I can see it, I can feel it, I can be there, and that's the context.
Okay.
So in language learning, it's being able to put into words the feelings and experiences that you have when you're in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't associate it so much just with the words. I have a sort of slightly different way of coming at context. And it was interesting yesterday because in our messages, so let's do context. Okay, we're going to do context. And then I was lying on the couch listening to the radio, and I don't know if people know him, but there's a guy called Craig Charles who's a DJ on Radio 6 Music, and Craig Charles is a scouser, and he plays some good stuff, and he does this thing every day when he's on at the start of. He wants you to guess the year these songs he plays were released in. Okay. So yesterday he played a track called Pearly Dewdrops Drops by a band called This Mortal Coil. I don't know if have you heard it? Do you remember it? No?
No.
Great tune. Really good tune. And means a lot to me, like, because I've got the album and like stuff like that. And so when he was going, what year is this? You know, don't use Google, la la la. And he played some of the tracks, and I thought, right, we just had our context chat on the phone, and I thought, right, I'm gonna see if I can get this year using context in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took myself back to when I listened to this song the most. And in my room at college, I was in a rental house with some postgrad students in Swansea Uni, and it was above a dentist surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out the back an old dentist chair they'd lobbed out. And so I got the dentist chair up to my room, right in the attic, right, and put it in the middle of the floor in my big bedroom at the top of this old house in Swansea, and set my hi-fi up. And I can remember listening to This Mortal Coil, Pearly Dewdrop Drops, lying in my dentist chair, right? It was the best listening environment ever. It was fantastic. I thoroughly recommend it. If you find an old dentist chair, grab it, right? Because they're brilliant.
Yeah.
And I can see. And then I thought, okay, I remember that really clear. Then what was I doing at the time? And I thought, what was happening? You know, I can see the room, and by process of elimination around my memory. I remembered I was in my second year. It was like 85, 86. But then I thought the album must have been released the year before because I had the album and I'd had it a while.
Mm-hmm.
And before I knew it, I thought, right, it's 1984. And I tapped into all the emotion and how I felt and stuff like that. And I was right. And that is how memory works. Things connect that are unusual, different, emotional, sights, smells, sounds, you know, things like that. That's how I got back to the year through cognitive markers. And the cognitive markers were university, crazy house, room at the top, found a dentist chair, great music, you know, what I was doing at the time. So that's how it works. Memory works. Now, and this is what we were just talking about before, going to like boom, nice connection. Conventional English learning in schools the world over lack of cognitive markers.
Yes.
Same classroom, same teacher, same four walls. The only difference in a private language school or a state school or whatever, learning a language, is the language on the page that the teacher is using. So there's nothing else, unless the fire bell goes or someone jumps out a window, there's nothing else to connect the language you're studying with anything else in your life, other than probably an element of boredom, and boredom isn't a great cognitive marker because we've been bored a lot in our lives, probably. That's not significant, So that is what happens. So the only difference is so what I see context being in terms of language acquisition is that the richer, the more meaningful, i.e. real and personal to you can make it, and you can make practice interactions, the better the acquisition. So sounds and meanings of the language are retained and retrievable much more easily when they have context that's personal and meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So context equals valuable connections. And I got another story that back in 2004-05, we taught a load of other course directors, like some EOT in London, because they were going to do Spanish out there and Italian out there in Rome and stuff. And we had these other schools doing it. And they were like, we had this lady, lovely lady, Helena Mazzo, who was the Spanish language director at International House Madrid. And we taught her and her colleagues some EOT, and they practiced it on the South Bank with members of the public, like one lesson. And 3 years later, she told me she could instantly recall and the language, what grammar was being studied, the tense or whatever, and she recalled the whole experience and the faces and names of the people she spoke to, and the sights and smells, the weather, the whole lot from that lesson 3 years later.
That's incredible.
And that's context. That's the context. And having a great conversation is linked to those elements, those sensory elements that we all use to create memories. So there you go. But on practice calls, I'll just finish up with, I thought, that's kind of EOT as we do it in the summer school, and we have done for years in London, like on the streets. What about on calls, which is what you mainly do, isn't it? And I've mainly done for the last God knows how long. And I told you a while back that I think that I add context to calls by sharing bits of my life with people. Mm-hmm. And often I've had moments where they've said something, or we've been discussing something on a topic, and something's come into my head, and I thought, oh shit, I can't share that. That's a bit ooh on the edge. And then I think, oh, fuck it. And that is the best context, because if they go, no, or you didn't, did you? Oh my God, that's terrible. That's context, because that's creating a stronger memory for them of the conversation, and thus the connection to the language they've been using. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one way of doing it.
So I sometimes chuck stuff in that is going to surprise them, and it works. It works because you're basically giving them the markers.
Yes.
Have you tried that?
To be extreme, not if I can help it.
Right.
But I understand the idea behind it.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
if we were totally cynical, we could make it up, you know. It's like, I mean, it would be fun. It would be fun. It would be an interesting experiment, you know, to lie profusely in a learning conversation.
Yeah, because it's a conversation. It's a learning conversation, so it really doesn't matter at all.
Well,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's just that I and you also we do establish naturally a relationship with these people. So if you're telling them things that are completely off the wall and saying it in a convincing way, and they believe you, and then it's like afterwards you say, actually, that was completely made up. Don't, you know, that didn't happen, or I'm not going to do that, or whatever. So it's a bit confusing, I think.
No, it would
'Cause
be.
then
I don't do it. I just share bits of my life that are interesting. But there is
yeah,
there's a comedian, Stuart Lee. I don't know if you heard of Stuart Lee, who's very, very funny. He's a master of the art. He tells whole jokes as true stories and gets to the end, and then everyone goes, "Oh my God," and laughs their head off. And he goes, "That wasn't true.
mm,
I lied." You know, and it's just playing with your kind of emotional cognitive sensibilities, and maybe he's creating cognitive markers by doing that. You know, it's like it is in a way, you know. I mean, I think in some respects, when we speak to people in any environment, we are. What is the purpose of speech and communication? You know, it's yes to express yourself and understand the other, but in many situations and things like work and social lives and stuff like that, and interpersonal relationships, there is a negotiation going on all the time at different levels. You know, an overt negotiation or an obvious one is a business meeting or something like that. But even in our own personal lives and interactions with friends, there is a negotiation. You know, we're trying subtly and gently to put across our thoughts, and human beings, and this is where I'm a little bit cynical, are inherently selfish to a certain extent, even if they deny it. Everyone likes to create their own environment socially, emotionally, that looks after them. And that's natural, I think. You know, obviously going too far is selfish and not to be desired and can cause trouble, but we are all in a negotiation in our communication.
yeah. That's once a long time ago, before the age of ELT, I bought a book on business English, teaching business
Hmm.
English, which was all about international negotiations. And in fact, at the very beginning, it mentioned exactly that all our conversations are negotiations. Negotiate everything with everybody.
Well, a learning conversation in terms of English is a negotiation, especially when there's misunderstanding, because you're negotiating understanding and meaning. So really, you know, doing what we do is helping people to learn to negotiate in a way.
Mm-hmm. To find your way around.
Exactly, exactly. To give you the ammunition, which I call, you know, words, the bullets
Yeah.
to use in that situation to understand. And that's why, you know, when we start teaching people EOT in the summer school, we always we kind of give them phrases and questions that so that when they're interacting with people, they know to say, "Excuse me, I didn't understand that.
Mm.
Please, can you say that again?" You know, or all those little words that seek to solidify understanding and comprehension and help the negotiation progress. And that's what that's what I think that's what happens. You know, like Caprice often sends me clips that students have shared with her of them speaking with members of the public during the summer school.
Mhm.
And I always get the ones that are like 25 minutes long. They speak to like 6 or 7 people, and one person they click with. And so the negotiation and the search for meaning, it becomes an enjoyable kind of journey. And they spend ages with one person, and they completely forget they're in an English lesson, and they're just having an interaction with a member of the public who's actually quite interesting, and is interested in them and what they're doing and what they're talking about, and they get lost, completely lost in conversation.
Yeah.
And you can hear the hesitancy and the nervousness sliding away, because they're not focusing on how anxious they might be or were, or what words they don't know or want to use and are fishing for. They just become part of a lovely intermingling of minds, and forget completely. And they have a great conversation. And then they always run back to Caprice, going, "Oh, Dad, I had a great one, I had a great one, I had a great one." Like, and that goes back to context then, because then they'll remember that contextually as, all their emotions kick in, oxytocin from their brain chemicals kick in, their feel good brain chemicals. And that, I didn't mention that before. The feel good brain chemicals like oxytocin and endorphins and stuff like that, they are what cement memories as well. They enhance and cement those memories. So this is why I see the whole kind of process as kind of a natural thing. It's just psychology to me. It's just how the brain works, and getting it into a situation where it can function optimally to acquire. Whereas, that's why, like, I remember you saying, I think it was last time with Judy or the time before, you said something. What was it? It was you and Judy were having a chat, and I was listening, and it was about, it was like a technical language thing.
About patterns.
It was patterns, but then it also veered into kind of stuff that like people ask about grammar points and things like that. Da, 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 da. And I think I've told you before, I just say Google it. I'm not going there. Not interested. And I think sometimes you possibly and other teachers or coaches or guides, don't like teacher, that is, and I think you referred to something like, or maybe the other way around. You didn't have the faith I had in the process as much, whereas because I've kind of created it and have done it for years, I have complete and utter faith that my time is best spent having a learning conversation on a specific topic they've studied, rather than trying to explain grammar to people. It's like the world is full of this information. You can go to Duolingo, you can go anywhere you like and learn the grammar and pick up or refresh the grammar. But it's not a thing that I would ever get involved in, because I wouldn't worry about it, because I know if they do what I suggest they do, it'll all be fine, and they'll stop thinking about it, and they won't worry about it. So I think, and that I think goes back to the start of this with that girl asking her boyfriend, and and all these people on Facebook wasting their time using trad methods, because it's hold on, I'm heading into quasi-religious territory here. Have belief in the human brain. That's kind of what I'm saying. The human brain is an incredible pattern-seeking device. That's what it does. There you go. I'll shut up now.
No, that's a good explanation. It's a very good explanation.
But they don't teach it in schools.
Right.
Anyway, have you got anything to add to that? Any comments? Am I deluded?
No.
Am I over the top?
No.
We can see each other, so like you can't see us, but we can see each other. Caroline looks a bit kind of, where's he going? What's he doing?
No. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I was just thinking I don't actually have anything to add right now because we've covered what we wanted to mention.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty clear. And I think whoever is listening will be able to understand a lot more from today's conversation. I think that's really fine. I think it's really good. And then when we do get together with Judy again, she'll have what she wants to say about context, and we'll have other things to mention as well. But right for now, I think it's good.
I kind of interested in I wonder what Judy will say about context. It's it'll be interesting. I really enjoyed having Judy in the conversation because she comes at it from, although we both have strong belief in the concept of patterns and pattern recognition, her career has been quite different from mine. Although she has Thompson Language Center and accreditation and teaches and had to teach conventionally, probably at the start to get her accreditation, all of that. We've had different sort of life experiences with the language, definitely. I think everyone does inevitably.
For me, it was really amazing to see how your approach is so similar. How your idea of your two systems is it's like they're different, but the approach is very similar.
How do you think they're similar?
Well, because you talk to each other like you really kind of understand each other on a very like deep level. You know exactly what you're talking about when you talk to each other.
Yeah.
And that means that you're coming from the same place, expressing it differently. But
that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, two people can come from understand or believe the same things, but our environment gets us to come at it from slightly different angles, as we've gone through life. So, no, it's good. It's good. It's good to have chats with her.
You've developed different your way of learning English differently. The way she's done something different, but they're complementary.
Well, you've used both, haven't you?
Well, yeah, more and more. I mean, I always start with yours, and then I add hers, like I sprinkle it on top.
Right. Do you use it when they get a bit stuck with their lower levels?
Well, I use the color chart for pronunciation a lot.
Right.
I like that. I mean, I've adapted it, but it's good.
Yeah.
But also the idea of this is something that I picked up last time from a conversation when we were talking about stress and syllables. And she said the accent is in words like station, nation, all the words that end with shun. It's on the syllable before the shun, explanation, for example. And she said that's a rule of thumb. It's like a family. And I was able to share that with somebody, and I felt really pleased that I could help that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was super useful. So it's like, as I say, it's something I add.
Yeah. 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 That's good. That's good. Yeah, because there are sometimes little hurdles, aren't there? You know, with pronunciation, especially based on first language and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's variety. It's helpful hints,
Mm, mm,
starting from the conversation that's been prepared.
mm.
Just anything that's useful is appreciated.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Absolutely. Cool. Right. Should we call it a day?
Yeah.
Um, Let me thank you for your time
Thank you.
and your expertise and input. You triggered my brain at the start with that story. It was interesting.
Mm.
Deep frustrations.